one of the coolest and most fun players to ever play Major League Baseball, died less than a month before they were to be inducted into baseball's Hall of Fame. Rest in peace, Dave Parker.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTube channel. Leave your comments. I read your comments. Some are nice, some are not so nice, and I read them all. Every single one of them. And we're wrapping up June pretty soon. When I do the summer score, each day where you're in a playoff position, you are going to get 2 points for that. And we're starting to see the playoff situation is getting a little bit interesting. But first things first. One of my favorite players of all time is Dave Parker. When I'm back at the Locked On MLB studios in Pasadena, California, overlooking the historic Rose Bowl, one of the pictures I have behind me is the preview for the 1979 Sports Illustrated baseball issue, and it's a picture of Jim Rice and Dave Parker, they're the previous year's MVPs, and they're both looking at each other and saying, who's number one? Dave Parker was one of those players that seemed to do everything well on the field, and did so with a level of intimidation, coolness, and a flair for the dramatic that, part of it could be that I was young and impressionable. The first year that I watched Major League Baseball that I could truly remember the ins and outs of the season was the 1979 season, which was the year that Dave Parker was the defending National League MVP, two-time National League batting champion, and his team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, went on to win the World Series. So maybe part of it is that early impression. But watching his videos or watching his highlights, that impression looks pretty accurate. He had an absolute cannon for an arm in right field. Watch his highlights in the 1979 All-Star Game, also the first one I ever watched, and see him throwing out the runner at home plate. He had great power numbers, and when he hit home runs, he had this amazing trot where he looked like he was kind of like moving his fingers around doing a little dance. He was a tremendous all-around hitter, winning multiple batting titles. He played in the postseason and came up big there as well. And he also just had an aura of coolness about him. When he got hit in the face with a pitch, he wanted to be more protected the next time when he came up. And he wore a full hockey mask, looking like Jason Voorhees at the plate. There's pictures of him smoking cigarettes in the dugout. And of course, the classic picture of him wearing a t-shirt in the locker room and wearing a phenomenal floppy hat. And the t-shirt said, if you hear any noise, it's just me and the boys bopping. I have that t-shirt as well because of Dave Parker. Later, he played for his hometown Cincinnati Reds. He was from Cincinnati. He won another World Series title with the Oakland A's and kind of bounced around a little bit. Had another terrific year with Milwaukee late in his career, and then finished his career bouncing between the Angels and the Toronto Blue Jays. And I've always thought he was a Hall of Famer. He was a National League MVP, 2 World Series championships, back-to-back NL batting titles, 3 Gold Gloves, Silver Slugger, 7 times an All-Star, the All-Star Game MVP in 1979, Home Run Derby champ in 1985, 2,712 career hits, a .290 career batting average, hit 339 home runs, and drove in nearly 1,500 runs. He did it all, and was an elite player for well over a decade. And I've thought he was a Hall of Famer for a long time. And here's the deal. He was on the ballot. He was on a couple of veterans committees and didn't get in. And eventually got in as he was very ill, as he was dealing with Parkinson's. And it was clear for the last few years of his life that, well, he didn't have much longer to go. And he was finally getting some of the recognition that I felt was long overdue, getting his standing ovations in Oakland, getting his standing ovations in Pittsburgh and in Cincinnati. And finally, he was put into the Hall of Fame this year. And I thought it was a wonderful thing that, okay, he's alive, but he didn't make it. He died this weekend, and it's less than a month before his induction. And there's a part of me that really, really gets frustrated when we wait this long. You know, it isn't just Dave Parker. Ron Santo was on the ballot a bunch and a couple of veteran committees. He got in posthumously. This year, Dick Allen. Now, Dick Allen was on the ballot and then a couple of veterans committee. 1 year lost the veterans committee vote by one single vote. And then he gets in posthumously. Did he pull a Bernie Mac in Mr. 3000 and a couple of hits that I'm not aware of since the late 70s? We saw this with Minnie Minosa. We've seen this several times with Gil Hodge. Well, of course, Gil Hodge is a bad example because he died suddenly in 1972. So, all right, we'll give him a pass on that one. But the fact of the matter is, why did it have to wait so long to honor Dave Parker? Or Dick Allen, for that matter? Why do we have to wait till they're dead or at death's door? Let's get people into the Hall of Fame when they deserve it. And they could be alive. Buck O'Neil was not allowed in until after he was dead. Or did Bucks discover a couple of other Hall of Fame players that I'm not aware of over the last couple of years before he was finally let in? It's tough to blame the voters and everything because the Cobra was indeed alive when he was put in, and I thought it was going to be a wonderful moment that he was finally going to get his due for being one of the elite players for such a long period of time. But let's get on it, folks. And I'm telling you, the Baseball Hall of Fame vote is going to have a very interesting dilemma pretty soon. And no, I'm not going to say the words Pete and Rose here. For some of the players who have been left off for PED or PED suspicions, those are going to be a log jam. And eventually, we're going to get to the point where we're saying, what are we doing not having them in? Because there are PED users who are in. Pudge Rodriguez was in the Balco situation. There were dirty tests for David Ortiz. And, of course, the Jeff Bagwell. Come on, folks. And David Ortiz belongs in the Hall of Fame. Ivan Rodriguez belongs in the Hall of Fame. Jeff Bagwell belongs in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. What are we doing with some of them? Let's not get to a situation where some of the players who obviously belong in are going to be put in posthumously. It's a great celebration we're going to have. And it would have been great if Cobra was there. Let's avoid this in the future. Let's plan ahead. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, so you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. You know, when I started tracking my spending with Monarch Money, I realized I had a whole bunch of subscriptions I forgot all about. And Monarch Money helped me get rid of them. And let me tell you something, if I'm sharing finances with my wife or you're sharing with your partner, it makes it super easy. And you get all your accounts and spending in one place. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONMLB for 50% off your first year. Now, some of you may know I'm not much of a praying man, but if you do pray, please do it now. And if you just believe in sending positivity out to the universe, which is kind of what I try to do that now for Ron Washington. Now, Ron Washington, it's unclear what his health situation is right now, but clearly it was strong enough to have him sit out the rest of the year. And for a baseball lifer like Ron Washington, who got the Angels to a 500 record, the Angels who have been floundering like a fish on the dock, and they're starting to play better. They're starting to win some games, and Ron Washington bringing that positivity to the Angels seemed to be a really big reason why. Well, his health issues have taken him out for the rest of the year, and he's been replaced by Bronxville native and Fordham grad Ray Montgomery. So my Uncle David, who was a Fordham grad, would have been proud of him. But let's hope. Look, I don't know what's happening health-wise. You don't know what's happening health-wise unless you happen to be Ron Washington's doctor who's watching this podcast. And it's clear from the reaction from Mike Trout and Logan O'Hoppe and Joe Adell and everyone else who has come out and spoken positively about Ron Washington that he has, in a short period of time, become a tremendously important part of the Angels organization and the Angels hopefully turnaround. And I say hopefully because I'm not necessarily an Angels fan, but I'm a Mike Trout fan. And I also, I live in California and I like to see local teams do well. And Angel fans, let's be honest, have been really supportive of this team. They draw very well. And they have one of the most, they have a future Hall of Famer on the team. I'd like to see them do well. And they were starting to turn things around under Washington when he left for health reasons. And when it's undisclosed health reasons for someone who is already past their 70th birthday, which is, he's not that far removed from the age that Dave Parker was, you start to worry. And I hope that it's something that, I hope Ron Washington comes back, because the game of baseball is better with Ron Washington around. He was a utility infielder, a career utility infielder, and one of the success stories of the Royals Academy, when the Kansas City Royals put together a academy to try to develop players beyond just through the draft. He was one of the success stories. UL Washington and Frank White were two of the other success stories. And he played many, many years I played with Los Angeles. I remember mainly with Minnesota. I know he played for Cleveland. I know he played for Houston. And then he became a fixture on coaching staffs. Now, he was absolutely beloved in Oakland. And he worked with the infielders. He was a former infielder himself. And he worked with the infielders to the point where Eric Chavez credited Ron Washington for turning him into a Gold Glove infielder. And in fact, in pop culture, you will remember that Ron Washington was a character in the movie Moneyball. Now, I have some issues with the validity of Moneyball. I think Moneyball is a very good movie. I think it's a very good movie, but it's not a movie to watch like it's a documentary. It's like, why did the A's win in 2002? Oh, it's because Scott Hatterberg took walks. Oh, I thought it was because they had Zito, Mulder, and Hudson and Miguel Tejada. Oh, it was because Scott Hatterberg took walks? Okay, that's interesting. But in the scenes where Brad Pitt and Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy were talking about whether or not he can make the transition from catcher to first base, an actor playing Ron Washington very famously is in that scene. And when Brad Pitt, who's amazing in the film, says, "If first base is easy, tell him, Wash." And Wash says, "It's incredibly hard." He was, by the way, he was played by career that guy, Brett Jennings. Movie fans would know him best for playing Harrison Ford's partner in the great movie Witness. But he then took over, when eventually, there was a lot of thought that when the A's were going to make a managerial change, first with Art Howe, and then, who the hell was the manager after Art Howe? Oh, why can't I remember? I'll remember it later. It slipped my mind right now. But both times, Waka. Was it Waka? Maka. Ken Maka. That's who it was. I was confusing Michael Waka and Ken Maka. Forgive me. There's a lot of baseball names in this brain here. There was rumors both times there was going to be Washington was going to be the new manager, and both times it was never him, and then Bob Guerin. And eventually he took over the Rangers, and for the first time in the history of the Texas Rangers, the Rangers won a postseason series. They had never won a postseason series until 2000. They had been around since my birthday, since 1972, and it took them to the year 2010 to win a postseason series. And they went all the way to the World Series in 2010 and got back there in 2011. And if Nelson Cruz timed his leap a little better on the David Freese fly ball, or let's not forget, they also had the lead in the 10th inning. If Lance Berkman didn't get a base hit up the middle, the Rangers would have won the World Series under Ron Washington's watch. As it was, they went to back-to-back World Series. And Washington, who later wound up winning a World Series ring as a coach for the Atlanta Braves, he was a man who showed great enthusiasm for the game, great enthusiasm for the players he coached, and also he was a very human figure. He had flaws as a human being, and he dealt with drug addiction and did so with honesty, with humility, and with dignity, to the point where he was able to get past it and yet show that he was someone who was, you know what, a flawed human being like all of us, but still worthy of forgiveness, acceptance, and love. And who could be against that? And is there anybody in Major League Baseball that has a bad thing to say about Ron Washington? I hope he's going to be okay. And even if he doesn't return as a manager, again, when you've already celebrated your 70th birthday and you're having health issues, the chances of you going back to the managerial job is usually slim to none. And so with that in mind, he's probably managed his last game and left the Angels better than he found them. And good luck to the Angels moving forward, because I think it would be good for baseball to see them back being a contender again. But whatever positivity you send out to the world, whether it's through thoughts, prayers, actions, or whatever, now's the time to do it for Ron Washington. Baseball is better with Wash around. Hey, summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're like me and you're all in about baseball, or you like golf or soccer, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You've already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get on the game while your friends get sunburned at the beach. Now, I love to match up our pitching setup, and we love to see Sonny Gray maybe get another 10 strikeout game, or maybe Jose Barrios winning another game for the Toronto Blue Jays. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and it makes regular season games feel like you're watching the playoffs. Well, in place of a same game parlay or watching a bet ride in the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Ron Washington has proven his worth as a manager for the Angels, as the team was absolutely improving under his watch this year and have crept back into the playoff race. They have an outside chance of making it, and that's better than you could say for any of the last few seasons. And so that's basically a way a manager can prove his worth, is by helping turn a team around. And there are two managers going into this year. There was a couple managers, and I talked about it on some of the shows that I did, and a couple of managers that I talked about got canned. Bud Black got canned. Chris Shelton got canned. you know, and we saw the Orioles made a managerial change, and a couple other managers that I talked about saying how do they still have a job were John Schneider and Ollie Marmol. John Schneider of the Blue Jays, I've been calling for his head for a couple of years, and Ollie Marmol has done very little to make me think that he's ready to bring the Cardinals back to where they're supposed to be. But one way you can change the mind of the organization, but more importantly, change my mind, your pal Sully's mind, is by having a team do a turnaround on your watch. John Schneider has the Blue Jays back in the playoff hunt. On May 25th, the Blue Jays were blown out by Tampa Bay 13-0. They might as well have stayed in the hotel, because if they stayed in the hotel, didn't show up to the ballpark, it would have been a forfeit, and the game would have been 9-0. Instead, they showed up, and it was 13-0. And they fell 2 games below 500. And they are 20-11 since. And they have stormed into a playoff spot. And look, at one big reason that they've played quite well, I think, is because the whole Vladimir Guerrero Jr. contract situation is in the rearview mirror now. And Vladdy Jr. is finding his swing, as is third baseman Ernie Clement. And they've been getting good pitching. Jose Barrios had a great game the other day. But sometimes it isn't necessarily a trade or a call-up. Sometimes it's a player having a horrible start, turning things around. Jeff Hoffman, their closer, had a horrific first quarter of the season, and he has been lights out this last month. So taking that player, having Jeff Hoffman go from being someone whose ERA had an area code in it to being lights out is like making a trade. You've traded a terrible player for a good one. It just happens to be the same human being. And of course, they're playing in a winnable American League. I mean, the Yankees are, they're probably going to win the division, and they're a good team, but they are definitely susceptible to, slumps. We've seen that. The Tigers are playing like the best team in the American League, but they haven't earned the medal of being an unstoppable postseason team. And the Astros, who had a good weekend to be sure, but you also have, the Tampa Bay, Boston's putting a bazooka to their own foot. So a team like Toronto could sneak into the playoffs, and all it'll take is a good week of Jose Barrios and, Goswell, whoever is going to be pitching, Bassett, and have them play well during that stretch, and they'll have an outside chance. So I've been on Schneider for a long time, but you have to give credit where credit is due, and right now he has them back in it. And Ollie Marmol is the same thing. The Cardinals are on a roll. Matthew Liberatore had a great outing today, and his childhood friend Nolan Gorman supplied the firepower. They have 10 wins in their last 13 games. The Cardinals have risen from the dead and are back in the playoff hunt. And as of this recording, the Cardinals are a playoff team and getting a giant jolt of help from the San Francisco Giants, who just lost the series to the Chicago White Sox. I didn't think that was possible. And they're gaining ground, the Cardinals, not the Giants. Cardinals are gaining ground on Milwaukee and first place Chicago. And Brendan Donovan has been a great spark plug at second. Sonny Gray threw a borderline no-hitter the other day. Turned into a one-hit. It was fantastic. Now, Ollie Marmol has the Cardinals on a roller coaster. After a horrible 9-14 start, they went 19-8 in May. Then they had a 6-game losing streak in June that took them out of the playoff hunt. And now they've won 11 out of 15, and they brought them back in. It may be tough to get a long-term toehold in this National League with some great teams who are, the elite teams at the top. But getting into it is a big, big part. And the Cardinals haven't been relevant for a few years now, since being clotheslined by Philadelphia in 2022. And for St. Louis fans, that's way too long. That is way too long. Now, I have called for these managers' heads, and I have to be consistent. If I call them out when they're doing badly, they're turning things around. And if they get the Blue Jays and the Cardinals, those two birds can fly into the postseason, You got to give credit where credit is due. You got to admit, even if it's someone you've criticized a lot, if they do well, you have to give them the thumbs up. It's only fair. By the way, thank you for making Locked On MLB your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night right here on this channel. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Talking about the great Dave Parker, may he rest in peace. The wonderful Ron Washington, may he find his health. And the health found in both St. Louis and Toronto, two teams who looked grounded but found their wings and are flying high. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.